can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, doing business in East Africa. What are those bottlenecks hindering the participation of women in cross-border trade? What policy interventions can be undertaken to address these bottlenecks? Statistics available about the volume of trade in all East African countries indicate that women are the backbone of trade and thus contribute a lot toward the economy of the regional bloc. Most of these women are engaged in both small-scale, internal and cross-border trade and face numerous challenges, sometimes beyond what the men face. Despite the challenges, many of which are related to the gender, the women possess so as to be able to fend for their families, which rely on either daily income or commodities traded across the border. A research conducted by some stakeholders indicates that there is a need for policy intervention to address the challenges that have been observed. Now, as part of events to commemorate the 16 Days of Activism, stakeholders in Uganda are running an advocacy campaign to deal with the challenges that have been documented. They are asking for intervention from all governments in East Africa, focusing on the specific challenges that have been noted. So tonight we examine the challenges and also look at the proposals that these stakeholders are making to strengthen the involvement of women in cross-border trade. Our guests tonight, Ms. Marren Akatsa Bukachi, Executive Director of the East African Sub-Regional Support Initiative for the Advancement of Women, or EASSI. You're most welcome, Marren.
Good evening, listeners.
We also have Dr. Paul Stephen Gitta, Director in charge of Market and Product Development at the Uganda Export Promotion Board. You're most welcome, Dr. Gitta.
Thank you, and good evening, our listeners.
We're also joined by Mr. Awel Uwihanganye, Secretary General of the Uganda National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. You're most welcome, Mr. Uwihanganye.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, listeners.
Marren, these 16 days of activism, can you give us some background to them?
Yeah, 16 Days of Activism actually runs several years ago, and it's activism against gender-based violence. It's celebrated it is marked every year from 25th of November to the 10th of December. So we have events every year to highlight gender-based violence, especially violence against women, because gender-based violence goes both ways. But this one specifically focuses on women. And here in Uganda, the women's movement has put in place a number of activities that are going to be run from the 25th to the 10th. And one of them is this radio talk show, where we want to highlight women's economic empowerment and some of the challenges they experience, and especially looking at trade across the border.
And what are some of the things that you'll be doing during those 2 weeks?
We are going to have dialogues. We have one of our partners that is right now in Kasese looking at sexual and gender-based violence for the whole week. They are calling it a Peace Week in Kasese for women who have been violated. We have another group that is going to be in Busoga area for a whole week, discussing issues of sexual defilement, gender-based violence. We are going to have a march by one of the groups, young women. We are going to have a march from the center of town to Nsambia Center, where we are going to have different discussions on, because when a girl child is also affected. So each different organization is doing its own thing, and then it comes together as a whole. We have our media partner that is called Women in Uganda Network, WUGNET. They are disseminating text messages, calling on people to promote peace, to promote, to protect women from violence, and then asking people to participate by forwarding those messages to other people. So even today, personally, I've received about 5 messages from them, and I've forwarded them to 5 other people. So in that way, it cumulatively builds up.
Oh, well, you come from the Chamber of Commerce. Are there specific issues that affect women that don't affect men?
Yeah, certainly. I think, for example, in the issue of cross-border trade, You find women spending long hours in this activity. So across borders, sometimes they are harassed by the customs officials or other people, and because they are women, for example, at night, they are prone to sexual abuses and that sort of thing. So the issues that affect women at border posts, there are quite some which are specific to women, particularly like sexual harassment and not having really strong negotiating power with mostly a male-dominated environment within these border regions.
How serious is it? Do we have some statistics?
I think Marren could help us because with the statistics with that, she's taking the lead on this project with specific to women at cross-border points. But what we know is that the women form the biggest, the bulk of the business and trade across borders. So perhaps the ratio could be about 40-60, but Marren could enlighten us. But we know that the women form the bulk of these numbers.
All right, we'll look at that in more detail later. Dr. Gitta, can you take us a little bit through some of these points? How, from your perspective, how poignant is it?
Well, I think, like my colleagues have stated, women form the bulk of informal cross-border traders. You see, cross-border trade could be either formal or informal. Informal, the difference comes in terms of whether these people use the gazetted crossing points and whether they're able to declare what they are taking across the border, and our revenue officers are capturing it. Now, if someone chooses to take maybe 20 kilograms of cassava flour across the border at Bibia from Uganda to Sudan, they do not go through the gazetted crossing area, or it's not captured by our revenue authority, we would consider that to be trade across the border, but it's informal because it's not captured. And the volumes of trade that go through that kind of manner are very big, because last year alone we had close to $700 million worth of informal cross-border trade.
Well, what area would that be covering? That's a large amount.
It's very large, and the kind of...
Is that worldwide? What?
That's Uganda.
Uganda alone.
Trading with its partners.
Cross-border trade.
Absolutely. Trading with its partners.
Women carrying things on their backs.
Absolutely. Congo and Sudan, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, you could name it. So the volumes of trade and their contribution to the livelihoods of Ugandans is so much, it's so big. You find a woman has 8 children and they're supporting other dependents because of that kind of trade. They will know when the market is taking place on the Congolese side, they will get their commodities and take them that side, and sometimes it's the reverse. So these people are so important, and the volumes of business they do are also so critical. The livelihoods supported are very large, and that's why we feel something has to be done to support them, kind of bring them into the formal fold so that they can access all the other benefits that the people who are trading formally are accessing presently.
But you said it's informal trade and you have a figure to it. How do you measure it?
Well, this is done by our partners in the National Bureau of Statistics. They have parameters that they use to measure this.
So this is not smuggling; it's normal.
You could not. It's not smuggling as such, but these are people who are taking. Because let me give you an example. Right now, we are in the East African community. The East African Common Market is ruling, and if I am to take products like maize from Uganda to Kenya, I shouldn't be paying any taxes. But someone will choose, because of very many factors, from ignorance to the fear of the documentation process, the harassment perceived or actual, they would choose to go through another route and not declare it, because they do not know how to fill those declaration forms. They don't want the hassle of waiting. They don't want to listen or to be talked to in English, that kind of stuff. So they will take their products across. They are not smuggling them as such, because these are not prohibited products, and there are buyers standing on the other side. And in any case, if you went and stood at a number of these crossing points, you would see these people carrying things, and people are looking at them and staring at them. There is a difference with someone who is getting a carton of Supermatch.
That's A brand of cigarettes?
Absolutely, a brand of cigarettes.
Right.
And they're smuggling it across the border, probably from Uganda to Kenya, or from Kenya to Uganda. And those ones, of course, the revenue will be running after them, because we're probably supposed to be getting taxes off that. But we are losing revenue.
Is it because it's a value-added product or what? Let's draw the line there.
Not necessarily because it's value-added. It may be value-added, it may not be value-added. But there are products that are classified, and the countries have agreed in some understandings that products of this nature will attract this kind of tax. And products of this nature, because of the benefit they have to the economies, the governments have agreed in the partnership that maybe we shall waive taxes, off them. So some people will smuggle those products. Now that's what we would call smuggling. But these are people doing informal cross-border trade. And these products are zero rated in terms of taxes. They could as well declare and have them go across, but there are so many factors that are keeping them in the dark. And so that's why we think it's very critical that these people are brought in the fore, their capacities are built, and they are supported to join the formal sector, so they can benefit other than running and paying a small bribe to a police officer because you're carrying maybe a bucket of tomatoes.
Can I come in?
Yeah, talk to us about
where you're asking about the documentation on harassment. As Paul said here, the revenue authorities are documenting the volume of trade. When it comes to these other issues of sexual harassment, you cannot really document it. You cannot, because from what baseline are you documenting it? But we have conducted research in 5 border points between Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi. And the feedback, and other people have done, such as UN and East African Community, they have also conducted research. And when you read those researches, women talk about men asking them for sex, their level of insecurity that they feel. In some cases, they are even raped. Why? Because they are using the panya routes to carry across their products. And this is because they are not aware that those products are zero rated. You know, the Customs Union Protocol for the Eastern Africa, EASSI Customs Union Protocol, it's a document that many people don't understand, or they don't read, or there has not been a lot of effort to simplify it so that it's accessible to the traders who are actually dealing with micro product. They are very micro, very small, minor volumes of trade. So they spent time going through those Spaniard routes. And I remember I was in one workshop, because our organization, we are also now working with the informal traders at the border, and we are inviting border officials to tell them what is happening at the border, how they can cross. And one woman was crying that her milk had been spilled. She's a Maasai. She transports milk from one country to the next. But she was using an informal route. It had not gone through inspection, and therefore it gets spilled. But had she gone through inspection, because there's the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture officials, they're all there to test the products. And if they are not certified, then you already know that you have to take it through the system. If it is certified, you take it across at no cost. So these women use those borders, those informal crossings, and at the informal crossings, they are middlemen. So these are the middlemen who sometimes harass you, or sometimes even the border officials themselves. They will sexually harass you if you want to pass your things without having a certificate of origin or all the other documents that are needed.
And what kind of products do they normally have?
They have farm produce. It's mostly farm produce, and farm produce must be tested. And they are in low volumes. They have groundnuts, they have maize, they have beans, they have cassava. Sometimes they even have handicrafts. And then you have tourism, and then you have maybe some little prostitutions. I think when you go to the border points, there are very many boarding and lodging houses.
Yes.
And so it's easy to sell your wares or get your wares across if you are willing to maybe sell other things. So this we call sexual harassment, and we actually call it violence, because these women are actually not aware of their rights, and they think if I agree to maybe communicate with this person, the customs official in another manner, tomorrow I'll be able to pass with my things, and in many cases it happens like that.
This is Spectrum listeners on Radio 1 tonight, doing business in East Africa. What are those bottlenecks hindering the participation of women in cross-border trade? What policy interventions can be undertaken to address these bottlenecks? You'll be able to call in later during the show to contribute to this discussion. You'll also be able to send in your text message. You can actually begin to send them in now. What it is, type the word Spectrum in your phone browser. Type your message, question or comment, send it to 7197. When you say the women are the majority, how do we know this, and how do you explain it physiologically? Why is it the women?
Well, we know for sure that the women in most of our African societies are mostly the breadwinners. I mean, they're the ones who, as Marren said, they're the ones who are always getting up and getting things done, looking out to support their families and etc. I mean, it's sort of something that's also noticeable when you're crossing any of our borders, that you notice large volumes of women carrying things or moving things around. Or if you also take a trip on one of our buses, you find majority of women going to Kenya from Uganda with either their goods or going to Kenya to get some of our goods. And we've also noticed it through our interventions through the district chambers of commerce that we have around the country, that women actually are the ones who are mostly involved in this sort of cross-border trading, which is why we set up this partnership with Extra Promotions Board and EASSI. And our main focus being is that, one, we need to give dignity to the women who are in business, protect their rights, but most importantly also bring them into the main fold of doing business. Now, most of them are not registered businessmen and women, businesswomen. So our effort is to look at ways of bringing them into the chamber fold by either registering them as individuals through associations, border associations, and also eventually getting them into formalizing their activities by giving them as much information as they need to be able to know the benefits of using formal crossing borders, formal crossing points, but also the benefits of operating as a business formally, so that they are better protected, they can access support and trainings and information. So pretty much that's how we're able to gauge the number of women who are involved in cross-border trade. So
basically the National Chamber of Commerce does not have offices at different border posts?
Yeah, we do through our district networks. The Chamber of Commerce has district networks around the country. So we have about 80. We have a presence in almost 80 districts, and some of these are around the border posts. For example, Katuna, Vivian, Busia, and Maraba. And through these, because it was a bit difficult reaching out to the community, not just the women alone, but in general, the business, the cross-border informal trade in general. So the idea was through setting up associations, because you're able to support these people when they are organized, because they are not a business. So we encouraged setting up of associations around the border posts, so that we're able to get a collective group of them, give them information, train them, and eventually, as I said, bring them into the formal sector. And through the support of COMESA, through the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we're able to access support that actually supports these associations at the border crossings, but also at the national level, where the National Cross-Border Trade Association is housed at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we're able to reach out to these networks through that association.
When you talk about COMESA, you actually mean the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa?
Yes.
So it's not a problem that's localized to Uganda, it happens in other places as well?
Yeah, well, as we are integrating as a region through East Africa. We're also through tripartite discussions, we're looking at how to reach out through the COMESA and SADC to integrate the whole market. So I think this is one of the first steps, the success steps that are taking place through COMESA coming on board and supporting this initiative of not just supporting East Africa but integrating the market further, because this is not just unique to Uganda or Kenya. it's really through the whole market, to Comesa market.
All right. Maybe we'd like to hear later about some of the experiences that you find in other places and what is common here and what is unique to Uganda as well. Dr. Gitta, what is government doing now about these people and what can it do to improve things?
Well, when all these policies and good things that we hear about were negotiated, they had everybody, every citizen, into perspective, or they had them at the back of their minds. But now when it comes to the implementation, and again going back to what my colleagues have said, you find that gender issues start emerging. For instance, knowing that the bulk of the people involved in informal cross-border trade are women, how, when we're implementing these policies, how well are we taking that into consideration? Okay, how many of them are benefiting from, for example, the common market protocol that we have today? The answer will be very few of them. Why? Because they do not have information. Secondly, the information that is available is not packaged for them. If you went and we did lots of studies at these border points, most of them had not even heard about the common market protocol. And when you tell them that you can take your goods across the border and pay zero tax, they do not agree to that. Why? Because the police officer or the security personnel that is standing at the Panya route, as it's called, is asking for something. So they think if this person is asking for 10,000 shillings, then it must be 100,000 shillings to cross the formal crossing.
Right.
Okay. So
which might not be the case.
Which might not
It's
be
not
the
the
case.
case, actually.
It's actually not the case, because products, by the way, that of course these products that are even below $1,000 US, most of those they would have to fill out a simplified certificate of origin, which is always at the revenue crossing point, and they just declare the goods and they're off. It's as simple as that. But they do not have all this kind of information. Secondly, what happens when a woman trying to cross the border to go and trade? What happens if this woman is sexually harassed?
Yes.
Where does she report to? If she's harassed by a policeman, to whom does she report? To another policeman? A fellow policeman standing at the counter?
Right.
Will they take her seriously? Aren't they the same people?
Right.
Okay. What if it happens within maybe the Uganda Revenue Authority? Something like that.
Right.
Where does she report to? So we do not have operational integrity action plans as well. And these have to be instituted. And there should be a process that is very well documented and known and publicized. Right. So that these women and these people who are dealing in informal cross-border trade know their rights. And they know, well, it's not unlawful to do ABCD. And if anybody does this, I can always, because we actually sat with a number of them for days.
Right.
And the stories that we got out of them were touching. We're saying we have nowhere to go.
Right.
Whom can I report this to?
Okay.
You understand, that kind of thing.
All right.
So
we'll hear a little bit more about that. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, doing business in East Africa. What are those bottlenecks hindering the participation of women in cross-border trade? We're going for a break. We'll be back. Do stay tuned.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends see potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special.
You've earned it. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Let the sunlight in.
Good morning, sunshine of my life. You look happy today.
I am. I came in here and I saw there was a whole pile of washing to do.
But I felt you didn't like doing the washing.
No, I love it. Anything else you need washed?
Sunlight 2-in-1 with added fabric softener. Smells so good, you want to use it again and again.
Let the sunlight in.
Sunlight 2-in-1. Sunlight Clean, Sunlight Fresh.
Sunlight in. Happiness is all around. Let the sunlight in.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.